So a warm good afternoon to everyone. My name is Kanika Pandey Tiwari. I'm the founder of Go Diverse, and we're very, very happy to have this session with ISTD. We're very happy to curate this session, this learning session with ISTD, and I'm going to hand it over to Mukesh ji, who's the chairman, ISTD Delhi chapter, for his opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
A very good afternoon, friends. I, on behalf of ISTD Delhi chapter and my vibrant team, welcome Shri Indranil Chakraborty, founder Storyworks, Mumbai, Dr. G.P. Rao, Ms. Kanika Tiwari. I also welcome all the past presidents of ISTD, chapter chairpersons, NC members of ISTD, my seniors and colleagues from ISTD, NIPM, NHRD, Rotary, DMA, ISTD, diploma faculty, and students and distinguished guests. Friends, Indian Society for Training and Development, popularly known as ISTD, established in April 1970, is the premier national institute of research and recently celebrated its golden jubilee. ISTD has large membership of more than 6,000 institutional and individual members involved in area of training and development and HR, mainly from government, public sector undertakings, private sector organization and enterprises, educational and training institutions, and other professional bodies. The society is affiliated to the International Federation of Training and Development, IFTDO, USA and Asian Regional Training and Development Organization, RTDO, Manila. The society is publishing a regular quarterly journal, Indian Journal for Training and Development, IJTD. Indian ISTD conducts a diploma in training and development, a correspondence course through distance learning of 18 months duration for the purpose of recruitment of superior post under the central and PSUs. Friends, every culture has its own stories. Great stories are universal. Great stories appeal to our deepest emotions. Mahabharata and Ramayana are examples of great stories told through ages to imbibe lessons of leadership, personal development, and valor. Storytelling predates willing. The great opera is a story too told through music. So I once again welcome you all to this wonderful evening, and over to Kanika ji.
Thank you, Mukesh ji. Thank you for introducing the topic and the session for today. So I won't take much time, and I want to just take you back in time. Imagine if you are 10 years old and someone very dear to you is putting you to bed and has told you a story about either a good man or about a bad person or about themselves or your favorite story. And years later, as an aunt or as an uncle or as a parent, if you have told the similar story to someone very close to you, that speaks about the volumes of the importance and power of a storytelling. And there are various forms of stories. There are stories we use to talk about ourselves. There are stories we use to tell ourselves. And there are stories we tell others. And the time that we are spending today in these lockdowns, I'm very, very sure this adventure, this experience, many years later is going to become powerful stories for a lot of us. And to do justice to a content like this, why not get it from an expert like Indranil Chakraborty? He is very dearly also known as IC. I'm very fortunate to have been his associate and a colleague and friend for many years. Quick introduction about IC. After 21 years of being in the industry and having worked with companies like Unilever, Tatas and Mahindras, IC founded Storyworks in 2015. He works with leaders and organizations to help them harness the power of stories to make their communication more impactful and memorable. He's also the author of the national bestseller Stories at Work, unlock the secret to business storytelling. So thank you so much, IC, for taking the time out today and partnering with ISTD in making this a great learning initiative. They say a great session is moderated by a great leader and a mentor and a guide. And today we are very, very happy and privileged to have amongst ourselves Dr. GP Rao. He knows no introduction, so I'm not going to. He's a very, very senior member of ISTD, has been pioneering a lot of learning initiatives. He's also the founder of Good People Relations. And sir, over to you, and please take the session.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So in your introduction, I caught on one point is Indranil is known as IC. He is the in charge for today's session, not me, not I. Okay. Today's format, friends, we have 224 participants. You please appreciate that it will not be possible for us to open the discussion and the audience raises the questions. So that's the reason we have requested you to send your questions in advance. We have already received a few questions. And there is a chat box. In the chat box, now we can stop these good afternoon messages. And then while the session is on, you can write your questions. And secret is if you write Q, before writing a question, no, it draws the attention of the organizers. You can write Q and write what you want. Write simple questions. So use the chat box for that. So that is one format. And I, as a moderator, and Kanika as a curator, we have done some research. We have done some survey. We have found out some relevant questions to us. And some people already have reached out to in advance with those questions. So what I'll start with IC. I want the spotlight be on IC, okay? IT, yes,
Hi.
yes.
Thank you.
You see, I will start with this, that Dadi Ma story sunati hai. That is one story. Then दूसरा है, in corporates and all, कोई अगर गोली देता है ना, कहानी मत सुनाओ बोलते हैं हम लोग. But then today we are serious. We want to learn and use storytelling in our corporate lives, our actual lives. So from a positive angle, no jokes. Today storytelling is a serious business. So does it mean that stories have to be real?
Okay, so first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here with all of you. First of all, in the work that I do, so stories don't have to be real as long as you're not in business. But when you're in business, stories do have to be real. So my working definition for stories for all the work that I do is stories are facts.
Stories are facts.
What I help organizations and leaders to do is to wrap the fact in context and then deliver it with emotion. Stories are facts wrapped in context and delivered with emotion. And you rightly said, in all the work that I do, the first two myths that I need to break, even for people who come voluntarily to learn storytelling. Myth one is, my part of the business is too serious for storytelling. I am in technology, or I'm in finance, or I'm in something on those lines, and it's too serious for storytelling. And that's the first myth. The second myth is, okay, I get it, but not everyone is a storyteller. And for the second one, my question that I have is, it's not about, I don't believe there is a single human being alive today. Forget the 244 people on this call, but there's a single human being alive who's not a storyteller. In fact, because human beings have been telling stories from even before language was born, scientists have now proven that human babies are born with an innate ability to tell stories.
Okay. So you mean to say that every one of us do tell stories?
Of course.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Let me give you a simple. Forget all of us, which are adults. Let me take this question to all of you. All of you would have had either your own children who went from not speaking a single word to being able to speak a full sentence, right? And if there are younger people in the call who don't yet have children, they would have seen children do that. Now, here's the question I have for everyone, right? What was your child able to do when the child was able to put a full sentence together? So let me give you an example. You walked into the room and you saw a broken vase on the ground. And you said, how did that happen? Did the child say, Mama, Papa, Uncle, or whatever, I ran, I hit the table and it fell and broke? Or did they give you some story, some, I don't know what story, but Black Man and Spider-Man had come and fought, right? My question to all of you is, did you or did you not hear made up stories told by children? And I'm sure the answer is yes. The next question is, did you teach them to tell stories? Teach them what a story is. Like stories have a background, an inciting incident, a climax, we didn't. We taught them mathematics. We taught them handwriting. We taught them spelling, but we didn't need to teach them stories. Why? Because we are all born with an ability to tell stories.
Okay, can I start with a difficult question? See, whether we say it or not, everybody is asking Mukeshji, but whatever you do, it has to relate to COVID, lockdown, difficult times. We have Mr. Kohli is here, Dr. VP Singh is here. Everybody is talking about change of mindset, change of mindset. So do you think we can, in these difficult times, can we use stories for the changing or modulating or guiding that mindset?
Of course you can. Of course you can. So there are two things that I think you can do when you're in any situation which is tough, where it is difficult to explain to people or difficult to change people's mind. One is you can take your message and craft it into a story structure. Maybe I'll take an example and show it. But before that, see, let me give you the sort of a problem definition. All of us on this call have been to multiple annual conferences where some senior leader has told us about next year's strategy. We've all been there, right? And in most of these calls, in the evening, there's been drinks and dinner. And question is, Dr. Rao, if I had to drop in as a sort of a investigator in the drinks and dinner and go around people and say, what was discussed today? Someone would have said, Vision 2030. And then if I said, what is Vision 2030? What percentage of the people having dinner that evening who have heard a message of seriousness from their CEO, what percentage do you think would be able to tell me exactly what was narrated? What's your guess from your experience?
Shall I put it in the chat box?
No, just tell me. One. What's your...
Maybe 50%.
Okay, then you would have worked with a fantastic leader, because whenever people have done this across the world, it's in a single digit percentage. Into what I'm saying is not that it was discussed as next year's strategy, but what was next year's strategy. And the reason for that is, typically most of our conversation, whenever we talk about change or what needs to be done differently, and I come back to the COVID situation, is usually on what we need to do, by when we need to do, how do we need to do, how will it be measured, etc. What we forget is the why we need to do it. And the answer that I get from anyone whenever I ask the why is, isn't that obvious? No, I know it's obvious, but not obvious at the point in time when I'm narrating it. And so the first thing what you can do for any change messaging or any explanation messaging during this period is take one little thing from a story, which is, can you ever tell a story without setting the context? You can't, right? You can't just suddenly say, and then he walked into the room. Who walked into the room? Which room? So you start by saying, there was this old man in 1924 and this. So anytime you tell a story, you first set context. And so the first thing we can learn from that in change messaging is, can I first set the context and then get into the change? Instead of assuming context. And there are tons of experiments that have been done across the world which shows that even when I show you a change which you should have known, you don't get it till I tell you what the context was.
Yeah, there are many wise men in the audience. They said as low as 5%. Yes. Maybe I have given his.
Yes. I was surprised when you said
because maybe I was used to those people, leaders who were using stories.
Yeah, could be. I mean, I would love to separately learn those people, because that's the usual answer. 1, 2, 3, 5%. Yeah.
Kanika, there was 2-3 people who were asking about scenarios. What is that?
One minute, Dr. Rao, sorry to interrupt, because I want to just expand a little more on this COVID thing. So one is we are telling people what should be done. And I'm saying from the story, what you learn is always put context before you tell the change. The second is that bring alive with examples. Anything that you are trying to make a point about, right? Let's say you're trying to, and let me make this up. You're trying to go and tell a set of people who work with you saying, listen, guys, just because you guys are in the age group of 20 to 35, and you have read in the papers or wherever that this is a low risk age group, doesn't mean you should not take this seriously. Now, if you give that advice to a set of people in your organization, it will go in through 1 year, go out through the other. Yeah. Now, why are you saying that? You must be having some information or example which has made you say that. So let us say I go and tell this group, guys, I think because you guys are between 20 and 35, you seem to feel that COVID wouldn't have any impact on you, and so you can take it easy. Just the other day I was talking to Sheila. Sheila was heartbroken. Sheila is 27. She had always believed that, because of her age, nothing would happen. And there was a big birthday celebration happening among her colleagues. And so she went. Yeah. She came back home. Her parents and her Nanaji stays at home. And Sheila, not knowing that she had picked it up, passed it on to her Nanaji. Yeah. The Nanaji was hospitalized for 5 days, and then Nanaji passed away. Today, Sheila thinks that she is, and she is right. She is responsible for having caused that because she thought she is not going to get impacted, so it should be okay. And hence, I believe that, it is not just about your age group, but it is what you might bring back to other age groups who are vulnerable, which is why you shouldn't do what I'm saying you shouldn't do. So by using an example, you bring alive that situation. Now, tell me, as I told this, did you or did you not imagine a Sheila?
Yeah, I did.
She doesn't even exist. I made her up just now.
Absolutely.
You imagined a Sheila, you imagined her birthday party, you imagined a home with a Nanaji in hospital, right?
Absolutely.
And the reason that works is, we've had this brain since we have been Homo erectus, which has been with us for over 100,000 years, which does all our heavy lifting. Unfortunately, that brain, even today, does not process language. It does not understand language. Yeah. What it understands is visuals and emotions. It processes visuals and emotions. And because that old brain has been with us for 100,000 years, it has become fantastic with memory. Only in the recent past, when language was born, the human being actually developed a new brain. The scientist calls that brain neocortex, neo being new. It's the neocortex that processes words, language, data, number. Now, the problem is that the neocortex is lousy with memory. So when you talk to me with just words and numbers and logic and rationale, you are discussing with my neocortex, which is almost like the RAM and the ROM. At the point of discussion, I can repeat everything I've heard. But 20 minutes later, I can't remember anything. But when I tell you the same point using a story, what happened with that Sheila example is your brain visualized. And as soon as your brain visualized, it got processed by that old brain, which is great with memory. And so whenever you're trying to do difficult messaging, asking people to do difficult changes, give them an example, tell a story, because it's going to go into the brain that visualizes and emotes, and which will make it remember. So those are the two things I think you can use in this situation from stories. One is setting context and one is visuals and emotions.
Okay. Kanika, there is some question around situations, scenarios.
Yes. So I think the question that some people have asked us is that, can you help us understand that, where all as a leader can we really use this? And the other one also, I'm sorry if I'm combining two questions, but feel free to take either, which is when, especially in times like today, when we are talking about virtual learning and online learning, how will storytelling create its impact when you're actually not even meeting the person who's telling the story to you? So if you could help us understand that. Yeah.
So it is two questions, Kanika. So I'm going to break that up, right? Okay. So the first is, under what situations can you tell stories? Actually, I personally believe, and maybe because that's the work I do, that there are only a few situations where you can't tell stories. It's easier to talk about those because every other situation, and I'll come back to a bit of them, you can tell stories. The only 2-3 times I will not tell a story. One is when I've told the story before. Yeah, that's definitely one side. I'm not going to tell the story. Two is when I have been asked a close-ended data-based question. So my boss says, "What's the sales deal yesterday?" That's not a good time to say, 4 years ago. Yeah, that time is a good time to tell an answer: yes, no, number. And third is when someone is very agitated. When someone is very agitated, they are anyway not listening. So story or not story won't work. But any other time is a great time to tell stories. Because again, remember, I'm not talking about stories from the Mahabharata or stories that are made up. I'm talking about facts. Just wrap the fact in context and deliver it with emotion. So let's take one of the first situations in any place as a leader or as a sales guy or anything. We all need to go and say hello, right? And I'm sure you will agree with me that people first have to buy me before they buy my product, idea, or service. Yeah. And what do they buy about me? Is it that I'm a MBA, I'm a computer science engineer, I worked in HLL and all that? Or do they buy that, either that, depending on the situation, I'm collaborative, I'm creative, I am a team player, etc. So do they buy credentials or do they buy character? And all of people in this call will tell me that definitely what builds relationship and rapport is character. Yeah. However, most of us, when we first get a chance to say hello, we go and actually do credentials. Yeah. So to me, that's a great place to start by actually sharing tiny anecdotes from my life, which will leave behind with the person an understanding of who I am, relevant to that situation. Yeah.
So people buy you first, and then they buy your story, and then they buy your product. Is that how it works?
They use the story to understand you, okay. And depending on whether what they've understood marries what they need, they buy you. Let me make that clearer. So imagine that I am going to my local bank to look for a loan. And they have a couple of banks here, and I'm the founder of Storyworks, and I want a working capital loan. Post-COVID, there's a working capital requirement. Now I've gone to the bank, I've filled up my form, and the person has said, "Go to the bank manager, introduce yourself." Right? Now, one way to do this is to say, "Hi, my name is so and so. I'm an engineer, MBA. I've worked for 21 years. Last 8 years, I've been working with Stories. Our initial clients have been very happy with the work we've done. We've grown profitably, and in the current situation, we are looking for a loan to grow further, and we know we can do it profitably, provided we have the right working capital. I filled up my form. I hope you look at it favorably." That would sound like a typical introduction. What if I went to a different set of banks, Kanika, and I said, "Hi, my name is Indranil. I was born in Shillong in the Northeast to a middle-class family. And somehow my parents managed to put me into a premier education institute where almost all my classmates were from more affluent families, tea garden kids and the works. And they always had more money to spend in the tuck shop, the canteen. So I remember when I was in class 3, I came up with this idea of running a comic circulating library, that too with borrowed comics. And I made a bit of money, and that really excited me. Not as much as they had, but much more than I ever had. And stuff like that has always been far more exciting than just the studies. I finished my schooling, went to Calcutta, stayed in a hostel, studied in Jadavpur University, went to IIM, worked in Levers, Tatas, Mahindras. 8 years ago, I started Storyworks. We've been working very hard. We know what it takes to work in a startup environment. Our initial clients for the last 8 years have been very happy. And we know even in this situation, we can grow and grow profitably if we had the right working capital. I filled up this form, and I hope you'll look at it favorably. Yeah. Do you think that there might be a different approval rate in these two?
A loan approved.
Yeah. Now, let's say you as a bank manager don't have the authority for the quantum I've asked for. Yeah. I've asked for 20 lakhs. Your authority is 10 lakhs. Now you've gone to your boss, the regional manager, and you're saying, "Boss, I think we should give IC a loan." And he says, "Why? What's he like?" What are the kind of words, Kanika or Dr. Rao, would you use to describe me if all you knew was the introduction I gave? You are telling your boss, he is, what are the words you'd use to describe him based on the introduction that I just did?
Kanika?
So I think, I totally got sold on that story. It's going to ring with me, but I think the words I'd possibly use is a very trustworthy, a risen through the rank person, somebody who has toiled very hard in life, very sincere, very dedicated, and very ambitious at the same time are some of the words I possibly use.
Very nice.
Dr. Rao, any other words that you used?
Someone has snatched my words, very creative and entrepreneur.
Yeah. So now all those are relevant words for me in that situation. But if I had gone to the first set of people and I said, "Here, my name is so and so, and by the way, I am very entrepreneurial. I am extremely trustworthy, and I'm very creative," it's not going to work. Yeah. Because you can't assert your credentials, but you can use tiny anecdotes from your life to get people to come to the conclusion of who you stand for. So, and starting with just that, which is the first time you meet people, how do you change people's mind? How do you change anti-stories? What are anti-stories? Anti-stories are stories people have in their head as to why whatever you're saying can't be done, or won't work. And many of those are based on beliefs and not on data. And I grew up in companies like most of the other people on this call, where I was told that the only way to change people's mind in a company is with data and analysis. But if I have a belief in my head, you can't change it to data, because belief is nothing but a story, and you can't fight a story with data. You can only fight story with a more powerful story. So if you're fighting belief, then you need to find a more powerful story to fight that belief. So on and so forth. So to me, there is no end to how much you can use stories in. So that's the question of where can we use stories. The second question Kanika had is, now in this virtual world, how would stories work? I mean, to me, first of all, it works as good as it was not in the virtual world, but even more. So imagine that I was not on camera and you couldn't even see me. And I was going on about, the 5 best strategies in the COVID thing is A, B, C, etc., etc. Versus if I just said, 5 years ago, which would catch your attention?
5 years ago.
5 years ago. Why? Because the brain loves stories. So your ability to connect with people in the virtual world or in the real world dramatically rises when you are singing to what the brain wants to listen to. Right? The other bit is that in the virtual world, the onus on clarity and memorability of words has gone up even more than what it was earlier, because non-verbal has been taken out of the window in most cases. Today I am on Spotlight, but for many people I'm on a phone, and they may not even see all my expressions. So which means that my message has to carry through with just the choice of words that I'm using. Whereas in a face-to-face, my whole expression, my body language was doing a lot of hard work. So to me, in training or anything on a virtual world, stories become even more powerful than it was earlier.
Okay. Do you think it can work while we teach or impress upon on a technical subject also, or it has to be only on the behavioral areas?
Okay, here's my question to Dr. Rao. Think of all your favorite teachers through your school and college life, including in technical, right? And I can guarantee that whichever you say are your favorite teachers were storytellers. Yeah. One of my favorite subjects in school, funnily, was chemistry. And if I think back today, it was not because the chemical reactions were fascinating to me, but that chemistry teacher told stories for every reaction he talked about. He told stories of how the inventor came up with that. He told stories of the usage of that reaction. And that's why suddenly chemistry became a fascinating subject for me. So it is not about teaching only the softer skills that you can use stories. You can actually use stories very powerfully. And I do that for a living because most of the biggest clients I work for are people who are in complex B2B businesses, selling AI, machine learning, and data analytics, and using stories to be able to get people who are not like them to understand what they do. So you see, the problem with very technical people is they can explain the thing that they do to another person like them. But as soon as you put them in front of someone who's not like them, they struggle. And that's where using either stories or story structure can be very, very powerful.
One clarification to the participants. that they wanted you to make a presentation and end with questions. Let me clarify to you, the format is he wanted us to raise questions. The questions that we are raising on behalf of all of you. And even in our creative written, please send your question at once. This is the format. Kindly excuse us. Don't think we are intervening into this period. This is a format. This is what he has recommended. This is not a master class. This is answers to our questions. Kanika, any question you have?
I think while you have given this question, but there's an interesting question that has come up, which is what are the important components of a meaningful, trustworthy, and encouraging story?
Oh.
So first, I'll break that up into what is the components of story, and then I'll come to what makes it trustworthy. So here are a few components of a story. You cannot tell a story unless you have a time marker and a location marker. Yeah. Without time marker and location marker, you can't have a story. The second is stories need to have a sequence of related events that happen. Something happened, that caused something else to happen, that caused something else to happen. Stories would have characters, and in oral stories, many of the characters will have dialogues. Yeah? And finally, a story needs to have an aha moment, something that I did not expect will happen from that story. Now, the question is, fine, that's a story. How does it become a business story? How does it become a story that is relatable to business? If my story can drive home a point, then it becomes a business story. So, for example, Dr. Rao, I really believe that little things make a big difference. Okay? So, in 2007, in the Second Iraq War, in a little town called Tikrit, there was an American general whose biggest issue was riots in the town. And every time there would be a set of people who would get together, there'd be narabazi and whatever, sloganeering, and at some point there would be a riot. So one day while he was sitting in his first floor office overlooking the plaza, he saw a crowd build up and an idea came to his head. And he called the mayor of the Iraqi town and said, Mayor, if I ever call you and ask you to remove the food carts from the plaza, will you do that? Mayor said, food carts? Why? He says, no, but just if I ask you, will you take my word for it? He said, okay, go, yeah, sure. And so the next time he saw a set of people build up in the plaza, he called the mayor and said, Mayor, food carts. Mayor removed the food carts. And sure enough, the build-up didn't happen because, the people who came in the morning at some point in time were hungry, no food, they dispersed. With just that one little thing, which is removing the food carts from the plaza, he brought down the riots in the town by close to 60%. And that is why I believe little things make a big difference.
Little things.
What I just demonstrated to you, Kanika, is what are the elements that take in a story and what makes it a business story. And finally, how do I make it relevant and authentic? So if you noticed, I didn't just tell the story. I started with what I call a relevant statement. Yeah? And there are two reasons I use a relevant statement. One is as soon as I said, Dr. Rao, I really believe little things make a big difference. What did he say? Yes, yes. Yeah. So I tacitly took his permission to tell a story. Yeah. But if I had said, Dr. Rao, may I tell a story? He might say, shut up. Yeah. Abhi kahani mat batao. Right. So I didn't go there. I don't want to use the S word. So I just said, I really believe. So I did a relevant statement to tacitly take his permission to tell a story. The second thing is, by putting that relevant statement, I got you guys to focus on only the point I wanted you to see. Because suppose I just told the story and asked you guys, what does the story stand for? Maybe Kanika, you would have said out of the box thinking. It was, but I didn't want you to go to out of the box thinking. Where did I want you to go? Little things make a big difference. So just like good horses with blinkers, I put a relevant statement to make sure you're looking only for that and also use that to get a permission. And why did I end with the statement again? And that's the idiot proofing part of it, just so that you get the message.
I like the idiot proofing completely, but we get the point, right? As long as we take it away. And I think a very relevant point, because some people had said that in today's time and age, how do you get people's attention? So thank you for helping us understand that. Dr. Rao, over to you.
Yeah, I saw that many of the participants said, see, the stories we can use in conversations and all, but most of us do selling. Sell a product, sell a service, sell a concept. Can storytelling be used in selling, sales? This is the question.
Of course. Now, I think one of the biggest mistakes a rookie salesperson makes is to sell the features of a product. Yeah. Any decent, half decent salesperson to a good salesperson will tell you that what you need to sell is the benefits of the product, right? Now, once you're starting to think about selling the benefits of the product, then the best way to explain the benefit is to tell me a story about someone else who bought that product and is utilizing that benefit. Yeah. Instead of just going and selling features. So yes, of course, you can use stories to sell, your product, and there are multiple things that you can do. But one of it is using stories to show how your product has given the benefit you're claiming to give to someone else. And through that story, I come to the conclusion rather than you saying this product has this benefit.
Does this require a formal training or education to be a good storyteller?
I think we are all decent storytellers. What is required in terms of formal training is because storytelling in a business context has two components. One is when you're actually telling stories like the one I just said, let's say the Iraq War story. Very often, you can also take the message you have and craft it into a story structure. And that doesn't come naturally. That needs practice, and that needs, that needs training. Yeah. And my thing is that, the training needs to be through organizations or books or approaches which are looking at processes rather than performance. So, when I started 8 years ago, there was there was no one else in this country doing business storytelling. Today, every second presentation trainer is a storyteller. Yeah. But the problem is a lot of them come from the performance world of storytelling, and they get into voice modulation and all that. No, that is not what you do in business. Business is about using the basic structures and formats of story. And for that bit, you need training. And the second bit that you need training for is how do you tell your stories in crisp and limited time? All of us know how to tell a story if there's no time limit. But how can I do that storytelling in 30 to 60 seconds or 90 seconds? That's where the training comes handy.
Wonderful. Now, see, anything that we do know ROI. So leaders do this storytelling. Is there a method to measure the impact of storytelling?
I've been asked that question 100 times by clients, as you can well imagine. And so here's my answer. If you were to able to give me two match sets, yeah, so you give me 20 salespeople who are equally good selling the same product in the same market, and another 20 who haven't gone through the training, I can give you the ROI. But when you are training a skill where there are multiple other impacts, then it's difficult to prove the ROI there. So what I do is, I have two ways to answer this question. I ask, tell me, how do you measure ROI of any other leadership training? And I'll use the same yardsticks.
Okay.
But if they don't get there, here's a beautiful example that was done 20 years ago. So 20 years ago, two people, what they did was they bought these little trinkets from eBay and stuff like that, like a old bottle opener, a broken toy, a key ring, etc. All of which were less than $1 when they bought it. Then they got people to write a story about that broken toy, about the little kid who had the toy, or how did the who owned the opener, etc. And they then went back on eBay and put those toys with these little stories attached to it. Of course, in this case, made up. And the entire lot sold for over 2,000% increase. Yeah. And any of you on this call can go to the website. When I remember it, I'll tell you. It's called. I'll get it. It's there in my book, so I'll find it and tell you just now. And so that is the kind of ROI you can get. But as far as the work I've done, most of the understanding of ROI has come more from anecdotal evidence rather than measured evidence. So I've had leaders call me within 2 months and said, you know what, we used one of your story structures called the clarity story to explain change, where we are trying to get a refund from the government worth, I think, some 11 crores. For 2 years, we've tried it. This time we went with using the clarity story structure to explain why we deserve to get the money back. We got it back. Now, so anecdotally, there's enough evidence of how stories work, but I haven't ever been able to get a match set of two sets of people who had said, these guys learned story, these guys didn't, and what happened to revenue.
Okay. Kanika, we're just changing the gears. These were the questions we received in advance and our survey. Let's now look for some questions from the chat box.
So one of the questions that has come is to understand the difference between case study and a story.
Okay, difference. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just a minute. I'm just putting the website on the chat. It's called significantobjects.com. You guys can go and
Significantobjects.com.
I've just put it on the chat.
Already put. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So the case studies originally were stories, yeah? And then someone then decided to make it a case study. To me, the case study is usually the second most boring document produced in a company. The admin manual takes the first place. Now, the question I think is not about what is the difference between case study and story, but the difference between methodology of case study teaching versus storytelling teaching. No, I don't think that's the comparison. Case study teaching is a great way to teach because you're taking a situation and asking people to put themselves in that situation and see what they come up with. Storytelling can be used during a case study teaching, and storytelling can be used in non-case studies teaching as well. Like we just said, if we have to bring alive an example, I can use a story to do that. And that doesn't mean I'm teaching in a case study situation. I could be teaching anything. Yeah, that the teacher of mine in school who taught me chemistry was not teaching case studies, but he told me stories about each of the invention, and thereby I learned from that as well.
Sure. So thank you for the clarification. There's an interesting question that has come, and if you can answer that for us, which do you prefer as an expert in the field? A well-known story like the war story that you spoke about, or do you think personal stories as leaders make more meaning? What is your thought on this?
I don't have a preference on either. My most important thing is which one of them is delivering the business point I want to deliver better.
Okay.
Yeah. So it is not, and so many a times it could be my personal story. Yeah. It could be a story, as long as it's delivering that point. Right. So what is more important is because here we are not in the business of telling stories for the sake of telling stories. In business, we are telling stories for the sake of making a point. So which story is making the point better is the question.
Dr. Rao?
Yeah, next question asked from this chat box.
So the question is, what role does testimonials play in a story? Your thoughts?
Testimonials in a story. So I'm going to make some suppositions. So I'm assuming people are saying that there are 2-3 things you can get from a client. You can get a recommendation or testimonial or tell a story. Now, the thing is that testimonials are definitely more powerful than me making a claim, right? So I can say that I worked with this particular company and their business changed, had made so much money, versus that person telling me. But very often I've seen is the person that most people go and take the testimonial form makes assertions. Yeah. So let me say that let me give you an example. So imagine I'm a IT services company. Yeah. And I've got my client to testify, give a testimonial that we are extremely customer service oriented. We are very responsive. We are this. It's going to go through one year, but through the other. 2 reasons. Why? First is I don't like assertions as a human being. I may not verbalize it, but some red flag goes in my head. And so instead of getting the client to give the testimonial saying, I am extremely responsive, if you can get the client to tell a story, meaning, can you get a client to give an example of a situation which made him or her believe that you're responsive, dramatically can change. Let me give you an example. So let's say you had got a recording where the client said, oh, this company is very, versus the client said, I remember it was Friday evening on my time, and this is talking from the US. My person in payroll called and said, sir, the IT systems are down, payroll cannot run on Monday morning. Yeah. Now the IT support comes from this company in Bangalore. Friday evening for us meant it was Friday, Saturday early morning or post midnight in India. But I took a chance and I called Sachin. Sachin understood the problem. By Saturday morning in India, Sachin and his team were back in office. They worked through Saturday, they worked through Sunday. By Sunday evening, we ran payroll. That's why I like working with Sachin. You don't have to say he's customer centric, he's this, he's that. So if your testimonial can tell stories rather than testimonials or assertions, then that would be very powerful.
Is there some set of skills required to be a good storyteller?
I think the first set of skill is to be a good listener, because so if you and there is if I've been teaching leaders how to tell stories, there is a skill that can be taught. Yeah, but I think it is more about getting people to understand a certain set of processes, and two is take out those two myths. Remember we talked about myth one, my business cannot do storytelling. Myth two, yeah. I am not a storyteller. I think my training first breaks those two myths. And I keep saying, over 2,000 leaders that I've trained, I don't think I've taught anyone to tell stories. They are all storytellers. I just made them use stories inside the boardroom. Yeah. And that's so yes, you can do the training. Yeah.
So you're saying the stories are from, as a child when we were in our bedrooms and somebody told us stories, to boardrooms. I think they go the whole way from cradle to the very end. So thank you for that clarification.
Can you pick up one more question from the chat box, Kanika?
So another question that came in here really was to share, can you share one example from manufacturing day-to-day work-related issues about employees trying to tell story to MD to make him convince on some issue? So how would you suggest somebody in like a mid-management tell a story to a very senior stakeholder?
Okay. You are telling a story to a superior
stakeholder. Yeah.
And okay, so again, remember that what let's go first back to our definition. What is a story? A story is a fact. You're going to wrap that fact in context and deliver it with emotion, right? Now, let us say that you are going to go and tell your superior, because you're not going to do the storytelling for the sake of storytelling, right? You have a message to give. Let's make up that message. The message is you want your CEO to ensure that no one is allowed on the shop floor without helmet and whatever, the protective jacket. Let's say that's what you want to say, right? You can go and say things like, we should do that. So, or you can say, last year we had 11 cases of people without helmets who had some injuries. So, sir, you have to insist that everyone wears it. That's another way to do it. The other thing is that you could go and tell a story about some guy who came into the shop floor without wearing the helmet, and how that person, whatever happened, and lost his life. Yeah, and tell that story. But not as a saga, not as a Ekta Kapoor kahani, but in 30 seconds. And then say, Anil is not alone. We've had 11 Anils last year, and we can't have any more Anils this year, sir. And so I need you to ensure that everyone in my shop floor is not allowed to enter this building unless they're wearing a helmet and a whatever. So bring alive the point you're making with an example of why you believe it needs to be done. And there is your story.
Some people tell stories naturally. Does it mean they read books or they make notes, or how does it happen?
I think it's not. Keep asking the two of you.
Yeah, sure.
So tell me, tomorrow, in your first meeting with either your team or with a client, how long will it take you before you give your first opinion?
First opinion, maybe about 10 minutes.
Less than that probably. Why? Because you're paid for it, right?
Yeah.
But were you born with opinions?
No.
Where did you get your opinion from?
From experiences.
Yeah. So see if you can add a third, because I have never found a third. We all get our opinions from either experiences we've had or experiences someone else has had, which we have either heard, read, or seen. Would you agree? I can't think of a third place to get an opinion.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to convert that into my language. In my language, opinions are a result of stories that I have been part of, or stories that I have read, seen, or heard. And so the first thing you can do as a leader is, the next time you give an opinion, don't just give that opinion. With that opinion, tell me that experience that led to that opinion. Because when you tell me that experience, you are going to go to that old brain of mine, which can visualize that, which can have emotions about that, and it'll be far more sticky. So if you just start with experiences from your life, blended and shared along with the opinion and advice, you started your journey as a storyteller.
Great,
of course,
great.
you can add to that by reading books and whatever. You also, if you want to become a storyteller, the problem is that you can't remember the story when you need it. Yeah. And so you need to find a way to create story data banks, which are saved in a way that they need in business. So all that can be learned. But the first thing you can do is just start sharing your experiences much more.
Anika, we can get last one or two questions.
I think there are last two that, and we can maybe make them quick. Really, the first question is, which has been coming in different language throughout the chat, is what according to you as a storyteller are some of the interesting things to do to gain someone's attention when you start to tell a story? It could be in an interview process, it could be in a selling process. So are there some prerequisite that you feel is a good time for you to judge?
Okay. So the first thing you shouldn't do is to say, let me tell you a story. Yeah?
Okay.
Because the problem is the definition that all of us have put on stories is that stories are made up, stories are for children, and stories are for entertainment. So in a serious situation, kahani mat batao. So you don't have to tell him I'm telling a story. You just go into the story, right? And, and so to me is like we said, if you are in an interview situation, let's take an interview situation and someone says, what are your 3 strengths? Instead of saying I am very customer centric, I am this and that, say, let me give you an example of some of the things that have always been, and you tell a story from where I can see your customer centric. Yeah. So you can use stories, and there are very easy ways of transiting into the story without actually using the S word. You can say, this reminds me, and you tell the story, or 4 years ago, and you tell the story. Yeah. So you have to find ways in which you transit in without using the S word.
Okay. Thank you. One last question. Kanika, one last question.
So I think I'm still wrapping questions up here, but largely, I think first of all, I see a lot of people are very thankful to the question that you have been helping us really here. And the last question is that as a storyteller, do you suggest that people start creating their own story banks? Do you do that? Yeah. Do you write them down every time you come up with something? So tell us about that, please.
Yeah. So the thing is that the reason we need a story bank is that even the stories we know well, we don't usually know them in the way we need them in business. So I'm going to make a quick question to Dr. Rao and you. Let's say tomorrow you're making a presentation where the point you're going to be making is skills and competencies cannot guarantee success. Is that a fair point to make?
Yes.
Yeah. And I said, listen, why don't you tell a story that drives that point before you make all your points? Does a story like this pop into your head?
Yes.
Which one?
About before and after kind of a scenario.
But I want you to now tell a story that all of us will resonate to and nod our heads. Then does it pop into your head?
Sorry, does it? Yes, it does.
No,
in terms of
no, what I'm saying is that it should be a story that I can relate to, and maybe I also know.
No, I will tell a story. I mean, without telling that I'm telling a story where a person succeeds because of his presence of mind or because of his humor.
Very nice.
Rather than his other competencies. I'll tell that story.
Yeah, very nice. But even if the rest of the people on this call don't know those stories, one story they all know, right? Which is I'll never use it, but which is the hare and tortoise story. Do you know the hare and tortoise story? Isn't it a story about skill and competency not being a guarantee for success?
Yes,
absolutely.
The reason you can't remember that is our brain stores stories indexed on 2 things: either on character, which is say the hare and tortoise story. Yeah, that one I know. Or on plot. The faster animal went to sleep, right? Or for example, all of us being from India would resonate with the Sachin Tendulkar and Vinod Kamli story as about skills and competencies cannot guarantee success. But we can't remember stories that we know with the business point we need to use. And hence, we need a way to save our stories indexed on the business point. So which is why, yes, a story bank creation indexed on business point is a must. And there is no way I can remember all the stories I know. I need I need that device.
The last question, which has come twice, and I'm just not wanting to miss that one, is do you advise some software that could be used for storytelling through data, or do you just plug in your data in the story that you're telling?
That's a whole new chapter.
Okay.
I'll try. So no. So the thing is that I think what you need first with data is to find a way. It's not just software, but find a way. It's called data visualization, to visualize the anomaly in the data. Yeah, because if my business is growing at 20% every year, there's nothing to share. But if there's an anomaly where there's a dip, so find a software or whatever you're calling it, visualization, to find the anomaly in the data. Then use story to explain that anomaly. And that's what data storytelling is about. But that's a whole new chapter. So
thank you.
Okay. Kanika will have to stop somewhere.
Yeah,
what we can, see, one way is dailychapter.istd@gmail.com is a very friendly ID. dailychapter.istd@gmail.com. Please send your queries. We'll try to find out answers for you if your questions have not been answered. Then can we get some idea of what are the takeaways today? Kanika, can you do something? Use some technology to know what is the takeaway today.
So what we can do is, if we can, may I invite all of us to kindly, if you have your phones with you, if I can invite you to kindly log on to menti.com, and I'm going to give you away a code. If you can type in that so that your responses about
I'll type menti.com, no?
Yes.
Yeah, it's already there. Yeah, already there.
So if you can
www.menti.com.
That is correct.
Okay.
So if I'm just typing in some words here, some numbers here, if you can just log on to that and type in few words that define for you what this session, some of the words that have come to your mind, something that stays with you.
The code is 59741.
That is correct, sir.
Yeah.
So if you can start answering your questions, we may have some words that might come up here.
Go to menti.com.
Do share with us if there are any learnings that you've had, something that stood away with you, and some of your takeaways that you might have had. So concept of anti-story, content with emotions.
Kanika, can I make a point?
Yes, sir, please go.
This is Professor Banwat. I was interested to...
It has to be typed only.
If you can kindly type your thoughts in the chat box, sir, we'll take it. Will that be all right, sir?
Yes.
A paucity of time and respecting everyone on the call, sir. So neocortex, anti-story seems to be a big hit.
Okay.
Dr. Rao, over to you, sir.
Yeah, okay. These are all nice points. What I would request all of you is, those of you who could not participate in this quick menti.com survey, please write down your comments, your suggestions in the chat box. If I have to sum it up, I will say that what I've learned today is, simply take your simple facts of your life, wrap with context, and deliver with emotion. So what is that is, be simple, do it simply. Small things, small stories will make great impact. That is my takeaway today. So I would request everyone to please write down your comments, your suggestions, your views, or any questions that have not been answered. I will now hand it over to our Mukesh Jain. I'll thank IC for a wonderful session. Thank Kanika. And now hand over to Mr. Mukesh Jain, Chairman ISTD.
So, thank you very much, Mr. IC and Dr. Rao and Kanika ji, for a wonderful session. And I'm grateful to all my seniors who are here, Dr. Banwat, Sunil Abdul Saab, Dr. Udesh Kohli, and Dr. Upadhyay. And I would request now to Dr. Sarvan Mukherjee, who's a team member of Delhi ISTD, to please propose a formal vote of thanks.
Yes. Dr. Mukherjee.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Dr. Indranil Chakraborty ji. Is a great presentation. Such a nice way of making such a simple things in a very simple way, and how much impactful it was. I believe that 240 people who has attended, as everybody has got a message how to make a story and how to make an impact.
Thank you.
I'm thankful to all the past presidents who are today with us in this. Professor Upadhyay, Professor Udesh Kohli, Professor Benoit, Professor Sunil Abral. We have a senior member from NIPM, NHRD, DMA, senior Rotarian, the Executive Director of Academy of ISTD, Dr. Joshi, and all the NC members who has participated this webinar. I think wonderfully done by the Kanika, to taking a note, putting the question before them, and summarizing, and Dr. Rao to moderate it. Thank you, Indranil ji, for such a wonderful. I love to read the books now. I'm really excited to go to your book and really take it from there. Whatever I got impressed on, how a simple story can make impact.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
for
you so
having
much.
me.
Thank you so much. So, I mean, we'll wait for your comments in the chat box. Yeah, thank you.
And thank you, Alok ji, for a wonderful support,
Yeah.
IT support
Wonderful.
for organizing this wonderful session.
Thank you.
Thank you
And
very much. Thank you,
Alok,
Dr. Sarvan.
yeah. Alok, keep this for about another 10-15 seconds, the chat box, then we could close it.
Sure, sir.
Yeah. People are still writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, some participant would like to know about the sharing of the learnings today. Yeah, we'll share. Please send your email ID to us. Okay, Alok.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alok.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
IC.
you, IC.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks.
you, IC. Thank you. Thank you,
so much.
Mukherjee.
Thank you for being with
It
us.
was
Thank
a
you.
wonderful session.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Dr. VP Singh, thank you, sir.
Namaskar, VP Singh साहब.
1 घंटा कम पड़ा एक्चुअली. बहुत सारे क्वेश्चंस है.
थोड़ा आईसी साहब की परमिशन लेके थोड़ा बढ़ा देते हैं 15 मिनट.
नहीं, फिर उनका रहता है एक तो, बिकॉज वो क्या है ना, मास्टर क्लास करते हैं ना, तो उसमें वो डिटेल बताते हैं. तो ये तो ऐसे होता है. पर्टिनेंट क्वेश्चंस, ये हमारा स्किल के ऊपर है कितना क्वेश्चन हम पूछ सकें.
तो नेक्स्ट टाइम मास्टर क्लास करवा देंगे सर आपका एक. Whenever you are free.
Yes, करवाएंगे.
Great. I'm logging off. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, IC. It was wonderful spending time with you, Aparna. Thank you so much.
Grateful.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, Alok.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we can close now.
Okay, thank you. Good day, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good day.
Kanika ji, Dr. Rao.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mukesh ji. Thank you, Rao sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kanika, for the help.
Thank you, sir.
307 at one time.
Yes, that was the maximum. Yeah, we crossed 300. Wonderful.
Wonderful.
Great, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Bye-bye.